And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government. Now, before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program is just about that. Welcome, everyone, to the University of Logic. I'm the Chancellor, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversation. And, folks, this week we had enough convoluted conversation to give every man, woman, and child a migraine headache.
Or a hernia.
Oh, I tell you, I want to, but before, not that I rant, me.
No, you never rant,
No,
Joe.
calm,
Never.
cool, and collective. That's
Yeah.
my motto. Last week, I had mentioned a guy came around and did some tree work for me that was so fantastic. Remember? And I
And
said,
you were going to tell us about it.
right. And
Yeah.
I mentioned his name, but I said, guess what? I forgot
You
his
forgot the information
I
last
forgot the
week. Yeah.
information. Right.
Now
Right.
you have it.
If you guys need tree work done, this guy is fantastic. I wouldn't do this otherwise. His name is Hugh Cooper.
Hugh Cooper.
Cooper. Yeah, he's in Tulsa here. His telephone number is 250-1933. That's 250-1933, area code 918. His cell number is 510-9300. 510-9300. Now, I'm doing this because I promised I would do that. I mean, he was so fast. He must have come back 6 times to do my trees, and he did an absolutely outstanding job for a price that I couldn't believe. So I said I would do that for him. Okay? Well, thank you very much, and I hope you are listening. So you know that I made good on my commitment to you, my promise to you. But, we have been listening this week on and off about this Chris Christie affair, whereby
Well, he didn't have an affair, though, did he?
Well,
Let's get it. I got you.
That was funny.
okay. All right, we're going off the air now. But this blocking off of 2 lanes on I-95. Now, for those of you who don't know the area, the George Washington Bridge goes over to Fort Lee, New Jersey, and on the west side. On the east side, it cuts through the upper sort of little tip of Manhattan. It narrows out and it jutties up, and it sort of goes into the Bronx, so to speak. And then there's a short span into Manhattan, and then it becomes the Bronx as you go east. And there it becomes I-95 and then Route 60 or something like that. Anyway, and I think that portion is called the Cross Bronx Expressway. Now, the Cross Bronx Expressway is noted for a place that you never want to stop.
Your old neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You never want to stop. In fact, a friend of mine, his car conked out one time. He was on a crossbar, and he pulled over, and he got out of the car to see what was wrong. He opened the hood, and a car pulled immediately. A car pulled behind him, and the guy came up to me and says, "Don't worry, all I want are the tires." No, I'm telling you, if you leave a car on the Cross Bronx Expressway, it is they say it is the place where a car will get gutted faster than any place in the world.
Wow.
It's
Man,
unbelievable. Anyway,
that's something. Yeah.
Understand
Well, don't
that
go there wearing that hat.
Yeah.
Do you see, folks? You don't see this, but this guy has
All
a
right.
pink sailor hat on tonight. He's captain.
So
I
what's-
don't know
what's
what.
the story
Well,
there,
there's
Joe?
a skipper. I guess we're
folks,
going
I'm
back to
wearing
Gilligan's
a
Island or
pink
something.
sailor ship. First of all, I
It's got
look
to be a
great in
meaning.
pink.
There got to be a meaning. In
I
that
look
somewhere.
great in I'm a good-looking guy, and in pink, I'm just hot. But I am wearing. We're a bunch of clowns. Give me some leave. But I'm wearing a sailor's hat, and this is a metaphor, if you will, I want to be the captain of my own ship, and I don't think we are. That's why we're here tonight.
Where's Professor Mary Ann? That's my question.
Yeah, Professor Mary Ann.
Gilligan's Island, you know. Oh, well.
I don't know, but I think we got Gilligan
for
right
that,
there.
Darren. Too young for that
Hey,
series.
what happened to all the girls? They're all sitting outside
Exactly.
today, aren't
Yeah,
they?
those
All right.
the girls.
Listen,
They're
people
smoking.
are hanging up by the dozens. You know
Okay.
that. Let's
Well,
get on
let's
with
get
the
to the
show.
point.
Yeah, get
All
back
right.
to the point.
So,
Joe.
Chris Christie's office apparently closed down 2 lanes for political reasons because of
Can you do that?
because there was a Democratic so-and-so, and I don't want to get into that. That's all garbage. That's immaterial.
So what's
as
the
to
point?
why they
Yeah,
did
what's
it.
the
well.
point?
Yeah,
All right?
exactly.
Someone in his office closed down 2 lanes. You have to understand that the George Washington Bridge is one of the most famous bridges in the world. It's a double-decker bridge. It's a gorgeous bridge. I mean,
They do a lot of shots
in
off
all
of that
the
bridge.
books
Yeah,
of
you see it in
the
movies all the
bridges
time.
in the
Yeah, you
world,
see it in movies.
and all
the
that.
George
Sure you do.
Washington Bridge is one of the famous bridges in the
Is
world.
it the one in Taxi? Is it the bridge that's in Taxi? Where
You mean tax? Yeah.
That's right. I think so.
The opening
Yeah.
of Taxi? You're
Yeah.
right.
Now, according to the AADT, that's the American Automobile Drivers Traffic Survey or something like that, right? AADT. And they conduct a survey of traffic on each bridge in the United States, right? The George Washington Bridge, according to the AADT, gets over 300,000 cars across it every day.
Wow.
Now, to put that in perspective, that is 0.1% of the entire population of the United States goes over that one bridge in one day.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't sound like 1/10 of, but just think about that. 1/10 of the entire population, I say, crosses that bridge. Now, if you look at it from an aerial point of view, I've got how many lanes? It is several lanes wide that feed in to Two-Tier Bridge. Phenomenal place. Anyway, now, all that is immaterial. I just wanted to set this thing up. What they've been talking about is who was responsible, who was culpable, all this other stuff. And this is what drives me nuts, and this is why I'm wearing this pink sailor hat. Just think for a second. He says, well, someone in my office, Christie is, and Christie, believe me, this guy is a tyrant bar none. I mean, this guy is a mega tyrant, I've heard some of his speeches where he said, screw you, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm in office, you're not, drop dead, basically, I love this guy,
like a New Yorker,
yeah.
you know?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
He's worse than me. That's bad.
He's a regular New
All right,
Yorker.
Could you imagine he is in charge, someone in his realm, if you will, and what the connection is immaterial also, closes down 2 lanes to what is suggested as the busiest bridge in the world. The busiest bridge in the world, someone decides to close 2 lanes. As a result, people have died. Ambulances couldn't get through. People died of heart attacks. They couldn't get to hospitals. All sorts. I mean, unbelievable. In other words, that was tantamount to murder. Right? Now, just think. If this was a company, let's say you had a sales force, and a company didn't buy what you were trying to sell, or maybe didn't like your price, and you decided, well, they didn't buy from me. What I'm going to do is lock the doors of that company and burn the building down, right? Now, if they ask the president of that company, hey, what happened? They say, oh, my salesman Bob, yeah, he locked the doors. They burned the building down. I know a few people died and all that, but, that's it. We fired him. Okay, good. Case closed, right? No more investigation. Everything is fine, right? Now, we're laughing. We're laughing like, oh, that's so stupid. It's silly. But what's the difference?
Is that what happened? He fired somebody and it was okay?
No, yeah, now it's sort of like he took care of it, like he's
washing
in
his
charge.
hands of it.
Yeah, he's washing. Anyone who would, first of all, how did this person ever get in office that would literally close down 2 lanes of a highway, knowing the ramifications? I mean, what kind of
New
evil was
Jersey.
involved?
What was the purpose of it, Josh? What was the
Well,
purpose of
it was
closing down?
it was a political move because they didn't support Christie and the Democrat. Oh, that's
You mean
immaterial.
it was
it's
like
all immaterial.
precinct fight or something over?
That's right. It's immaterial. The fact is, someone in his office did it, and they treat like, well, it wasn't me, it was Bob. Or whomever,
we got rid of Bob.
And they have the name of the people, and they say, well, we fired a couple people.
Well, whatever happened to buck stops here?
Yeah, that's
whatever
right.
happened
that's
to
right.
that, huh?
And yet, what we do, the reason why I'm wearing a sailor hat, is because we accept that. We go, well, he took positive action. No, this guy should hang. This guy should be charged with murder. It's his office. He's responsible. And when you see the interrelationship with all these people of how they got the jobs and the loans and the money, and it gets so dirty you don't want to read it because it gets you disgusted. And yet, what are they discussing? Well, do you know what kind of ramifications did it have? And you think maybe he can overcome this in his election, in his...
It's a foregone conclusion he's going to go for election.
Oh, yeah. Now, this is your next president, folks. Get to the... Stand online now. We got somebody on the line. Yeah, line one,
Dennis
you're on
is
the
on
air.
The line.
Dennis.
You there, Dennis?
Joe?
Yes, Dennis, you're on the air.
Yeah. Hey, the George Washington Bridge, it dumps you off on the Major Deegan first, remember?
Okay, yeah, then it goes to Fort Lee, doesn't it?
Well, on the Bronx side, it dumps you off first on the Major Deegan. Then you can take the Cross Bronx Expressway.
Okay, yeah, all right. It's been many years, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Or you can go down, or you can keep going down to the BQE, the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, or the
That's
LIE.
right. Okay.
What part of the neighborhood you from, Denny?
Hey, listen, man. My grandfather was on that job that built the George Washington Bridge, and all the guys that worked on that job, they all signed the bottom of that bridge. But it's the Brooklyn Bridge. It's the beautiful bridge.
I know. Yeah, that's the bro. Dennis, we got about one more minute till a break. All right, so we're gonna let you be.
So what's Chris Christie? Remind me again. He's a governor, isn't he?
That's right. He's the governor of Jersey. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that.
I could swear I've cleaned some of that off my shoes before.
You New York guys, you have a sense of humor, my Lord.
Dennis, that's beautiful. We owe you on that one.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot for calling in. Appreciate it. Take care. Okay, we got someone on line. What's your line? Line one?
No, that's your guest coming up here.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, guest, hold on.
Too much fun.
All right. I think he'll probably hang up. He won't be part of this
After
program.
he listens to this segment anyway.
Yeah, he's been listening
yeah, but
to
folks,
this.
you have to understand that when you hear this stuff, you really should put it in context. Say, what would happen if I was in charge of something and this happened? People got killed, whatever. You think they say, oh, you let Bob go. Well, that's good, and then we go on to something else.
You don't know any money back.
You would be hauled in jail.
Yeah.
You would be held culpable for everything, and yet we don't do that with our politicians. Larry Kudlow, a guy that I just absolutely love to hear because he makes me want to vomit every time I listen to this guy. He talks about Clinton. He likes Clinton. He's a Republican, but he likes Clinton. He says, but he said, and he said this, and he says, we all knew that was an untruth. I wanted to call in and say, Larry, why don't you just say the guy's a liar? They can't say liar. They say it's an untruth. Everyone. Okay, let's go break. When we get back, we'll be listening to our guest. Well, folks, we're back. And this portion of our program, I'm going to introduce our guest is Matthew Mills. He's an attorney from Granville, Texas. What's that? Granbury. I'm sorry, Granbury, Texas. I've just been corrected once again. All right. And he wrote a book. He sent me a book, Where the Religious Right is Wrong. He's a devout Christian, and he brings out a good point. Excellent book, excellent writer. Let's put him on. Is he on the line now? Okay. Mr. Mills, are you there?
Yes. Yes, okay. I'm here, Joe.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Liberty Talk Radio. We am so pleased that you called in.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe.
Okay, now you say that where the religious right is wrong. Where are they wrong?
Well, the biggest reason that I wrote the book in the first place was really about war And I touched on some other topics, too, support for corporatism, and then, talking about Israel and some foreign policy things, and just kind of our slavish devotion to anything America does is good, and we're going to support all the wars and all the whatever that we do, and we don't really question it. And we say, God and country and that kind of thing, but it's supporting things that really aren't wise and aren't biblical and aren't, making any common sense. But the war is really the biggest thing that kind of got me to write the book.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I could never reconcile the process, the thought process, where we say praise the Lord and nuke them.
Right.
And we do that. I have friends that think that way.
Right.
They talk biblically. They go to church, and then if you ask them a question, it's like, it doesn't make any difference. It's okay. It's okay to kill. It's okay.
Right.
It's okay to do almost anything. And you give us some of the highlights in some of the chapters of your book.
Well, my favorite part in the whole book, I think, is, in the war chapter, talking about just the value of human life. And, Joe, let's just pretend you and I were on a jury and we had a death penalty case, and we were deciding whether somebody deserved the death penalty. You and I would take that very seriously, and we would be very rigorous before we just pulled the trigger on somebody, right? I mean, you would
absolutely.
Okay.
It would be rare that I would even say yes. I can't even.
Right.
Right.
But then somehow we lower the bar down to, well, he's a suspected militant, and then we can take out him and his family, and oops, if we kill a wedding party in Yemen, that's just the cost of doing business. But the value of a human life, it's gone way down whenever we call it war, because we say, well, all's fair in love and war or whatever, but we end up wiping out tons of innocent people in the process. And it's just sickening that when we dress it up as an official government action, it suddenly becomes okay to kill all these people.
Yeah. Well, why do Christians, especially devout Christians, think that way? What is it? I mean, what is it that makes that segment so militaristic and basically so unchristian?
Yeah, I can't really figure it out exactly. I think there's a few reasons. I think one of them is they see the United States as being a, quote, Christian nation, and so we are the sword of the Lord, worldwide or whatever. We're the bringing justice and democracy and whatever to all these people that we're bombing. And the other thing, I think, the support for Israel goes into it, too, especially in the Middle East, because we think, well, we got to be on God's team here, and so Israel is our buddy, and they're getting God's favor, so therefore we need to take out Iran and Syria and all these other people that oppose Israel, and I talk about that in another chapter of the book, too,
It's I think it's a theological misconception it's a perverted theological misconception that has been pumped into the Christian people of this nation. Yeah. I really do. I think that they've actually pumped them full of bunch of, and I won't say what I'm going to say, but BS. and they haven't come up for air long enough to figure it out. And it takes a voice like yours, and I want to say thank you for writing such a book.
I think it's Zionism is the main problem.
Right.
Because you can have Israel straight, but it's the political powers behind it.
No one has a problem with the Israeli people. No one has a problem. But when your government is as corrupt and as corrupt as ours is corrupt, they're like in bed together, and they're doing atrocities around the world. Yeah, I mean, you can't agree with that. You can love the people, but not the actions they're doing.
Well, that falls in line with what I was talking about in the first part of the program, about the way we accept things. Yeah. Is that we have a group of people who say that, well, we're the chosen people.
Right. That's a mental thing. That's horrible.
You're the chosen. The guy next door? No, screw him. He's not. And we're the chosen people. And then you combine that with American exceptionalism.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you can do anything you want to anyone, regardless of your religious affiliation.
You're exceptional.
Yeah, that's it. And then the other major theme, I guess, in the book is, there's this quote-unquote health and wealth prosperity gospel, that gets out there. And so everybody, in the old days, I guess in the Christian church, people were more skeptical of the super wealthy, powerful people. But now those are our idols. Those are the ones we want to be. We want to be the rich and successful people, and quite often the billionaire peoples are the ones looting, the country and looting the Federal Reserve System and all the rest, and we're not skeptical of those people anymore. We trust them and idolize them and want them to be our presidents.
Well, of course, if they'll just parrot the, God bless America at the end of a speech, or if they, make some biblical, innuendo that makes them kind of look like they maybe read the Bible. Man, they could just play into the hands of most Christian people.
Yeah, Huckabee and Bush and
all those guys do it.
Yeah.
All of them do it.
All right, Matt, I assume you are a Christian, right?
Yes,
Christian?
yes.
Okay.
And it's a very biblically based book. I quote a ton of scripture in it.
Okay. Well, even with the Federal Reserve, the usury now. When I grew up, I was not a fervent reader of the Bible or anything like that. I was.
Oh, he's a choir boy. Tell the truth.
I really was a choir boy, but I was in the Catholic
when he was
Church.
Young, it was Catholic Church.
It was a sin. If you read the Bible, you went to hell, I think.
Oh, really?
I was
that old?
I was a Catholic.
You're that
old? No, it was bad.
That was like 16th century.
No.
Let's get
no one. No. You know what it is? I'm pre-Bible. That's why. No, in the Catholic Church, you don't read the Bible. You read the Catechism. You memorized everything. But, from my perspective, they talk about, especially the Old Testament, talk about usury, right? And I have a couple people who know a lot more than I do about everything. And usury was never good.
No, and we used to have laws in this country against it.
Yeah, and yet we have devout Christians now who support the Federal Reserve.
Oh,
I don't think I understand that.
Well, most of the Christians don't even know what the Federal Reserve is.
Exactly. Joe, here's what's really scary. I got a master's degree in economics, and I didn't know that the Federal Reserve was privately owned. I didn't know where our money came from, and I had a master's in economics. Isn't that sick?
Well, no, you went to a school in America, right? In the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's a real problem. But if you were outside the United States, I'll bet you would have learned that first thing.
Right.
You know? And we couch things in such a manner with such words. Just like I said, we have words. We don't say, Nixon lied or Clinton lied. We say, he said, he spoke an untruth. We can't say anything the way it truly is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're telling all your listeners that.
Well, I'm glad you're. And by the way, you're a very good writer. It's an easy read. It flows it flows nicely. Do we go to break soon or when?
We got about 3 more minutes.
Oh, 3 more minutes to break. All right. I didn't want to cut you off right in the middle of a thought process. Okay. Now, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I got to thinking about, I'd like to talk to some people, in my church and other churches about, the war thing was the biggest thing on my mind. And I thought, well, how could I ever get all the people into one room at one time and have enough time to lay it all out there? I thought I've got to write a book to get it all out there and give the footnotes and, back it up with all the verses and so forth. So that's when I, started writing the book. It was about a year ago, and I just kind of did it in my spare time when I wasn't in the court.
Okay. Well, by the way, I want to mention, it sounds like we have Morse code in the background.
Yeah,
is that on our end or his end?
I can't tell.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out.
Like it sounds like a ping on a cell ping. Are you on a cell?
Are you on
No, I'm on a landline. I'm on a landline.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because when you speak, it goes click, 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 click.
Or maybe it's
we don't know what it is. Okay, we'll have to live with that. I mean, we can hear you loud and clear. It's just that it's not coming out very well. Now, what type of reaction are you receiving from those people in your congregation or those people close to you, close to your family, that read your book or no, they may not have read the book, but they know what your position is? Why don't you tell us something about that?
Well, from the people who have actually read it, I think everybody says, yeah, I see where you're coming from, and you've really backed it up well. But there's some people that are just going to see what the topic is, and they're going to dismiss it out of hand. Because here's the thing, Joe, when people are reading nonfiction, in politics especially, you want to read what you already agree with, and you can just nod your head mindlessly and say amen,
Right.
And you don't want something to get in your face and rattle your cage at all and question what your answers are, So a lot of people, I think, are skeptical to even pick it up and give it a chance, but the people who are giving it a chance are saying that it's a well-written book.
Yeah. Okay. You had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. And what's the name of the book? I want to read it.
Where the religious right is.
Where the religious right is. All right.
Yeah. Where the religious right is wrong.
Yeah, we have a group of people here. Most of them are clowns, here at the studio.
Hey, I just came here tonight. I just walked in the door and they let me in. I said, "You want some
we
coffee?"
felt sorry for him, Matt. That's what,
We have a caller here that wants to ask the author a question.
Okay, let's take it up. You want to take?
Great.
How much time do we have before the hard break?
We got about 30 seconds. Can he hold on?
Well, let's try it. And then...
Matt, could you hold on through the hard break, and then we take the call? I don't want to cut this guy short.
It'll be about a minute, two to 3 minutes.
We'll go for the hard break, and then we'll come back, and then we'll have a good 25 minutes or so.
Stay there.
Okay? Callers, stay there. Don't go away. Okay, Okay, we're back. We're back with the author of the book, Where the Religious Right is Wrong, by attorney Matthew Mills, who is a Christian, so he's not talking from outside looking in. He's an insider, hopefully making people look out. And that's very important, especially in today's day and age when things seem to be so dangerous, and we measure whether or not we go to war by the mood of the country. And if we change the mood of the country, we may change our perception and our activities overseas. We have Matt, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, I think we have a caller.
We got your phone line cleaned up too. So.
Okay, now do I have to press a button?
No, you don't have to press.
Okay, there's another Dennis on line 2. Dennis, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Dennis, thanks for calling Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ. What is on your mind today?
Well, I've been listening to Matt. Is this going to cost me, Matt? You're an attorney.
I wish.
Are you going to bill me for this?
Tell me your address. I'll send you a bill.
We have your telephone number. We will trace you down, Dennis.
Well, you're talking about this ambiguity, because being a Christian, and I claim to be a Christian, and in Romans 13 it talks about how we're supposed to obey authority, and from the pulpit we're taught, to always submit, never make waves, be the good guy, and submit to authority. But when authority crossed the line, and now we're here in America, and this is where this dissonance is in America, because now we're being forced to do things that cross the line with our beliefs in God. And I think, and it's not just with Christians and Catholics. I mean, it's got to be with all religions that it's like, okay, we feel we've been pushed so far. Now that's enough. Now we're being forced to do things that go against what we know in the Bible. But the Bible also says, obey God and obey the authorities put over you, or you will be in judgment, like in Romans 13.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And in chapter 7, I give a real long discussion to Romans chapter 13 and what we should do about it. And right after that thing about obey the government and everything, it goes into love all men and love your neighbor and so forth in the same chapter of the same book there. And, throughout the New Testament, really the whole Bible, there are exceptions to the whole thing about submit to government when it comes to, when you have to, say that you don't believe in God, or you have to go kill other people or do things that are clearly against God's word. You're supposed to reject the government and disobey the government when it comes to those things. So, and that's really in the Old and New Testament throughout. So, if the government wants to draft me to go fight a new war in Iran, I'm going to say I'm not going. I'm going to be in Canada or something, but I'm not going to go and kill people in Iran, just because the government drafts me to do it.
Yeah, and even Paul himself, Paul wrote that in Corinthians, and Paul was thrown in jail and killed for his faith because he wouldn't shut up and not preach. He preached regardless.
But what is your perception of crossing the line, like you said?
Well,
go ahead, Dennis.
Well, I was saying, like, a lot of times people talk about taxes. All the senators and representatives, like, Jesus said, look at the coin. On one side of Caesar, and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. But Jesus never did pay Caesar he never reached in his own pocket and paid Caesar. And I think he was saying, to me, it was really important what he was saying, that money that he had one of his servants go and get the coin from the fish. The fish paid the tax, but he never paid the tax because a king, to me, never pays tax to another king. And to me, I read it from the angle of more like a libertarian, where there shouldn't be taxes like that. If you serve the king and you serve Caesar, then obey Caesar. But if you serve God, then obey God.
So what would it take for American Christians or Christians around the world to stop using Caesar's money?
Well, I'm going to leave that for the author.
Okay, Matt, you're on the mat. Matt, you're on the mat again.
You're on the mat.
Well, I guess I'm a little more conservative, if you will. I mean, if it's not one of those things that I clearly lay out, there's some gray area here, but what gives us the right to disobey the government just because we think our taxes are too high, or if we think they're unconstitutional, that might be another topic. But I pay taxes, and I would tend to think that we should still pay taxes. I don't see a clear exception for disobeying the government when it comes to taxes, like I would for going to war and going and killing other people.
Do you know what the income tax is?
What do you mean?
5%.
Yes.
Oh, the amount?
Yeah, 35-40%, something like that.
Yeah.
24.5.
You think there's nothing wrong with what the government's doing?
Oh, there's a lot wrong with what the government's doing on a lot of levels, but, there was a lot wrong with what they were doing in the day of Peter and Paul when they wrote those admonitions too. Okay, so, I guess I'm a little bit more of, it really means what it says, and I'm going to submit, except when there's these clear-cut things like, killing other people or, disavowing my allegiance to God or things like that. So, but there's a lot of gray area, and I give it, hopefully, a good review in Chapter 7 of the book.
Yeah, taxes, the reason they're so high is because of all that killing and maiming and sending our troops all over the world. That's where the money's being spent.
Yeah, it really gets muddy because what if your taxes, the money that you're paying, is going to kill people? Are you not culpable?
You got to look at it. You got to think about that, and that's one of the reasons why you got to stand up. So I'm tired of paying taxes for wars like this. We got to stop it.
Right.
So you get involved.
Right, and it's I'm sorry, go ahead,
Dennis. That's a very tough one. And the last time I wrote a check to the IRS, on the little note section on the bottom left, I put wars and bailouts.
In the memo? Are you talking about the memo?
Yeah, the memo.
Oh, that's great.
That's perfect.
That's perfect. That's great. But, all that bothers me. And I think what has happened is that, this country should have been one in which the people decided what to do, not the government, and the government was there to ensure that no one else came in and imposed restrictions on the people.
Yeah.
But when those that got elected eventually said, hey, it's kind of nice up here, I think I will start imposing taxes and restrictions on the people. And they turned the whole thing inside out, upside down.
It's advocating your authority.
That's right.
It's advocating your
That's
authority.
right. And
if you give up your authority, the people in this
Right.
government had the authority.
Right.
But we've gave it up to these hirelings, as
Right.
the Bible calls them. They're hirelings. They went up there, and they have run roughshod over rights and taxes and everything else.
No one wants to give up their privilege.
And nobody wants to stand up and say, you know what, we got to stop this. We got to call
Right.
it for what it is. It's usury. It's overtaxation. It's getting into our
illegal.
lives.
The Bible
It's
even
illegal.
talks about this in Revelations. It's the false Jews that are running everything right now.
You think
Oh,
so?
Yes.
That's it?
I mentioned
And
that.
Jesus
That's
was talking
Revelation
about
2,
it.
Wow.
2:9 and 3:9. I mentioned that in the book. Yeah.
All right, I
The
know you have a
Ashkenazi.
chapter. You have a chapter on Israel.
Right.
What's your stance there, Matt?
Well, a lot of things there. One thing that they say is the ethnic Jews, the descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, are the chosen people, and God has a special plan for them, and He's given them this land forever, and so forth. And one of the things I get into, I don't know if you're familiar with the Khazarian Empire.
Oh,
and all
I
that
read
stuff.
about it. Yes, I did.
Ashkenazi,
Okay.
Khazari.
Well, I think a lot of the Jews today are not, Semites. They're not even.
It's not a
descendants.
race. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's not a race.
It's just a religion.
They're-
It is a belief.
Yeah, And so if it's a religion and not really a race, and it's all been convoluted with a lot of Khazarians who adopted Judaism in the 7th to 10th centuries, then why do we have, to give them a specific land, and why do we have to, kill all the people and wipe them all out and get rid of the Palestinians and so forth? And a lot of it in that chapter also deals with a doctrine called dispensationalism. Are you familiar with that term?
I'm not. I'm the dummy of the group.
Ages.
That you have to explain
ages.
that to me.
It's the ages. There's certain ages of dispensations.
Well, it's kind of an end times prophecy thing, a premillennium view where basically it says Jesus is going to come back and reign for 1,000 years from Jerusalem, and all the Jews are going to be converted to Christianity and so forth. And I kind of disagree with that view. But the thing that's even more galling is, even if you think that way and you think the Bible predicts that, why should we go over there and fight their battles now and wipe out all their, foes and give them all this money when we're $17 trillion in debt anyway? and they're one of the best economies in the world, and we pump millions into them all the time.
And they got Jesus coming back to help them. I mean,
they don't need us.
They don't need us.
How is that constitutional? Yeah.
Well, I mean, what is your opinion when they say we are the chosen people? What's your take on that?
Well, I think the chosen people, from certainly a New Testament perspective, are Christians, and that's what they call the Israel of God in Galatians chapter 6 and so forth, is the people who have accepted Christ, in my opinion, are the chosen people of God, and those are the ones who are the Israel of God. So I don't think that God has a special feeling for the ethnic Israel anymore, and I certainly don't think we need to be fighting their battles on behalf of, the United States. So
whenever I hear that, I default to East Asia, and I think, what of the 1.2 billion Chinese? What about the millions of Mongolians? I can go on and on. We're talking about billions of people, a couple of billion people who have no affiliation with the Christian religion. I mean, is God saying, well, it's their tough luck, screw 'em? I mean, I really have I'll be honest, I have a very difficult time. I have a very, very difficult time connecting those dots.
Yeah, and furthermore, when you look at the United States with no official religion or anything, how should we, even though I'm a Christian, I don't think that we should say, well, the Bible is the reason that we should take foreign policy, measures in certain directions. So even if you thought that the Bible advocated going over there to support Israel, I don't know why, as kind of a secular-based, country, we should be taking those actions. And how do you explain that to all the Muslims and Buddhists in the United States, that we're doing this because the Bible says whatever,
Oh, yeah. It would be as if Christ was, let's say, Chinese, and I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just giving you an example.
Right.
If Christ was Chinese and he looked very much Oriental, all right, and you came to Europe and said, he is your savior, even if you were right and you could prove it, it would be rejected because he doesn't look like you. And if you look at the pictures of Christ through the years, it has changed. He looked like people of the Middle Ages, during the Middle Ages. Now he's got golden brown hair and all, he's a hunk, if you will.
Mark mentioned the chosen. When he said today it's people who are Christians are the chosen, what that really means is it doesn't matter anymore about ethnic. It matters about whether you're chosen. In other words, you are adopted into the faith of God. That's what you got to understand.
See, I look at it differently.
I know, but
I look at it the opposite way. If it's the people who choose Christianity, see, to me,
you're getting real theological here.
No,
you go to Dallas Theological Seminary
because it bothers me because I hear this all the time. Well, the chosen people.
You must be Presbyterian.
No,
that's what you
no one came down and said, hey, Joe, excuse me, you're not chosen. Get out of here. No one's done that. Michael Louis did that. But that's another story.
That's a different story.
But I'm just saying that when we say that, are we in reverse? Are we in reverse, Matt? Isn't the person themselves is the one that's doing the choosing?
Wow, this is a tough one. I am what they call Calvinist. I do believe in a doctrine called predestination, where it's, in Ephesians chapter 1 and Romans 8 and other places, where, God says that I chose you before the foundation of the earth to be my people and so forth, and saying that to the Christians. So I actually do believe that, but, there's also man's accountability and, accepting that and believing and taking a step of faith, too. So there's kind of two sides to that coin. But that's a big topic for maybe another day.
I realize that, and I don't mean to be argumentative. It's just that's always confused the heck out of me, and that's why I bring it up.
It's just because in Catholicism, they don't teach you John 3:16. For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish.
All right,
God so loved the entire world, whether you're Japanese, Chinese,
I know that.
all that.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's how the context of that verse was in. That's all
I'm just saying that it's confusing as all get out.
Yeah, it is.
And be respectful. I used to be an altar boy. Respectful. There's some respect around here. Now, what do you think? What do you think about the state of Israel? What's your position on that?
Well, I think that they're, the bullies of the region. I mean, you look at, for instance, the USS Liberty, which I talk about in the book. I mean, you could walk the streets of Tulsa and ask everybody, what's the USS Liberty? Nobody would have a clue what that is, And, in 1967, they go and blow up a U.S. naval vessel in the Mediterranean Sea.
Right. Right, absolutely. Unmarked Israeli planes, and it's documented. I mean, I mean, it's absolutely. There's no question about that. Right.
Yeah, and you look at. I talk about the so-called Lavon affair, where they do this false flag to try to blame it on the Egyptians and so forth.
Right.
Rally support. For their causes. But, I mean, in reality, when they went in there from 1948 on, I mean, they're wiping out Palestinians. It's a very apartheid state, especially in the West Bank, with the unequal rights. I mean, it's basically Jim Crow laws, and we're acting like they're our big buddies. I'm serious. I mean, it's, difference in the buses, difference in the rights to all sorts of things. And they're making the Palestinians there a subhuman class of people, and we're acting like they're our good buddies over there. And I just don't like what their government is doing at all.
Well, you would think after the Jews have been persecuted so many times over the years, you would think now that they have their own land, those people who are in the land with them, especially when they were the minority.
Yeah.
In some segments of Palestine, which is now considered part of Israel, Israel is part of the Palestine, the Jewish population represented 1%. Of the people there, 1%, and they took over. And you think they would treat them with some respect and saying, hey, thanks for giving us your land. But they subjugated them immediately, and I could never understand that. Yeah,
it's a bad deal. And even now, the you can go to the visa policy of the official government website, and it'll say if you're Jewish or have adopted Judaism as your religion, you get certain privileges to be able to be an immigrant. And if you're not, then, you don't get those rights. So it's, it's kind of I guess you could say bigoted or whatever, but that's the way it was set up from the beginning and has been all along where, if you have a certain race or religion, you're elevated in status. And I don't know why we should celebrate them as this beacon of freedom in the Middle East when they're doing those things.
I wouldn't even call them Jews.
Yeah,
I really wouldn't.
No, that's right. No,
they're identifying themselves as what the Bible said, the chosen people.
Yeah, I think they use the Bible in that regard for their ends. The what do you think we should do with the Federal Reserve?
Abolish it immediately.
Are you sure about that now?
Yeah. Oh my word. I mean, if there's one thing that I could do in the government, it would be abolish the Fed, because the Fed, creates all this funny money to create all the wars, to create all the bailouts, to create all sorts of havoc. I mean, I've heard Ron Paul say the last century of Federal Reserve banking has been a history of total war. I mean, immediately after the Federal Reserve went in, World War I, which the country didn't want, and then World War II and so forth. And, if you went around and actually forced people to pay, $5,000 a family, $10,000 a family per war up front, nobody would do it.
They won't even do Obamacare. What are you talking about?
And that's the cost. that's the cost, but it's just, they keep running up these debts to push on to our grandchildren or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous. But, and I talk about that in chapter 4 of the book. I mean, the money changers in the temple, when Christ was wiping out all the money changers and stuff, those people had a monopoly on the issuance of currency, that half-shekel coin tax that they were paying at that time. So they had a monopoly on the issuance of currency, and nothing made Jesus mad more than that. And now that's what we have now. They have a monopoly on the issuance of our currency, a privately held cartel that is just, totally profiting on the backs of the people, and it's really a shame.
But, each chapter in your book, you discuss major topics, all of which defend the Bible, but which in practice, we violate the tenets of the Bible, and yet most people are on that side of the fence of defending the practice that violates the Bible, and then they call themselves Christian. That blows my mind. How do you, I don't know how you wrote this book without shaking. I mean, I can't imagine.
The pen of a prophet, man, I'll tell you.
Well, there's just so much propaganda in the media. There's propaganda everywhere, with certain pastors who, get on this bandwagon. I don't know if you've heard of a guy named Cyrus Scofield about 100 years ago with a Scofield Reference Bible.
Yeah, Scofield Reference Bible, uh-huh.
Okay. Well, that was kind of the kickoff for dispensationalism in this country. And Cyrus Scofield, according to my research, was funded by a lot of the Zionist Jews who wanted him to write this book that would appeal then to the Christian people, but then it would get them on board for the Zionist movement, which really started, in the teens and 20s.
Yes, Scofield was a major sinner, actually. He was completely hypocritical to everything that...
I got a question. So, how do we get this, seriously, how do we get this in the public debate of Christianity today? How do we get what you're saying, your book? I mean, I'm really impressed that you wrote a book like this. I didn't read it. Joe's already read it, and I'm going to steal it from you after the show. But how do we get this in on Christian talk shows?
Because if we do, you're right. Because if we do, when I say we, I mean collectively, we would change the entire countenance of America. I mean, we would not go to war anymore because people say, "Wait, I'm a Christian. I go to war. I kill people needlessly. Other than not being attacked. Right? And we cannot believe those people that are in office. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're the devil. They want to talk the devil. We got the people. We know who the devil is, and they happen to be in Washington.
They have flesh and blood,
right? And they're the ones that are perpetrating the war and then killing our sons and daughters and taking our money through a Federal Reserve to perpetrate this.
Christ's name right down with them.
I mean, to me, there's not a Christian thing about that.
No, synagogue.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's people, I don't know if you've heard of a pastor named David Jeremiah on the radio. Yeah. But, I was listening to him one time on Christian radio, and literally his sermon was about how bad Iran is. On a sermon. I mean, these people have... Yeah, I mean, it's all about Israel. It's all about dispensationalism and that kind of thing. And it's... I don't know what's going to change it. But the thing that is, I guess, kind of saddening is so far the book has gotten a much better reception from the more libertarian people and a bunch of yawns from a lot of the Christian churches.
They don't want to unplug.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, so that's kind of a shame. But I'll keep beating the bushes,
Well, have you received any sort of like hate mail or anything like that, or?
Not yet. Not yet. But, maybe that's a sign of that you've really arrived if people are starting to send you hate mail.
Well, can we get your address? Would you do that?
No, you'll be in my camp. All right. We have about a minute to go, Matt. Why don't you tell our audience, more about your book, how they can receive a copy of your book, and how they can reach you if they have any questions.
Yeah, well, it's available on Amazon, and there's also a Kindle version. So the Kindle version is $4, and then Amazon, it was at $13, but they discounted it. It's maybe $11.50 or something right now for a paper copy. And I actually put my email address on the back cover, so I don't mind, getting hate mail or whatever kind of mail I get. So, Millsie77 at yahoo.com, MILLSIE77 at yahoo.com. If people want to email me, and they can communicate with me like that if they want to get more information.
Okay, Matt, thank you Matt, what size T-shirt do you wear?
Oh, I'm only about 5'8", 145, so I'm a little guy. So maybe just a medium or something.
Okay, I'll send one to you in the mail. Thank you very much. Our time is up. I want to thank you so much for being our guest, folks. This is Matt Mills. Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. This is, until next time, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ. Stay well, stay tuned.